Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining in. A warm welcome to everybody who's watching this. Today, I begin the conversation series with Women of Substance. This was something that was started by my parents who founded Prerna Pratibha in 2005. And the conversation series was one of the many activities that was conducted by the organization. Keeping in mind the keen sense of interest I showed towards Indian dance and Indian music, the conversations back then revolved around Indian dance and Indian music only. So a few weeks back, when I thought of taking this conversation series forward, I asked myself, who would I like to speak to? And whom would I like to hear? Who has unknowingly or knowingly inspired me in some way by just being who they are, loving what they do, and just being so good at what they do. So then I thought to myself that they've always been people who've been inspiring me in various fields that I've been connected with: dance, music, art in general, science, the research field, the corporate industry. So I quickly made a list and I actually called up and messaged these wonderful people, and they were so gracious to actually accept to be a part of this conversation series, and it wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for them. So thank you so much for accepting to do this. I love all of you all. Now with that, I'd like to begin today's session, and I'm supremely excited to introduce the guest for today. Well, she doesn't really need too much of an introduction, I feel, especially for people who are active on social media. I mean, she is a social media influencer. She is a celebrity. She's been teaching and traveling for over 10 years now. She's originally from the US, but she's lived in different countries. She's lived in Korea, she's lived in Dubai, and now she's in Vietnam. She loves animals, she loves cats, she loves music, she loves adventure. And if you go follow her page on Instagram, Ellie Kuti, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Her content is so fresh, so creative, so intelligently put together that it makes learning such a fun process. So I'm so happy to have her as part of my conversation series, and I have a lot of questions that I'd like to ask her and learn from her.
Hello.
Hey, Eliza! It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you
Before
so
I
much for having
start
me here.
anything, Eliza, and before you say anything, I must say something to you, which I've been practicing, and I hope I get it right. Um, Ningalka Hardamaya Swagatam.
Oh,
Is that correct?
yes. So, what a
Awesome.
very heartfelt welcome. Yeah. Nandi, padre Nandi. Nako sandashamai. I'm so happy to hear you speaking
You're so
Malayalam.
happy to hear me. This was the first time I attempted speaking in Malayalam. I actually tried figuring out how to say things, and it was only for you.
Oh, that's so sweet.
So how have you been, Eliza? You're in Vietnam right now. You were in Dubai. So you made that trip from Dubai to Vietnam during a global pandemic. How was that
Yes.
experience?
It was very interesting because I came to Vietnam for work. I had gotten the job offer back in April or May. And so because of the situation, Vietnam's been very strict about letting people in. So on this flight that was meant for 324 seats, there were 24 people.
Wow.
And so I'm flying on this Emirates flight. I literally had the whole row, the entire section of the plane to myself. And then upon arrival, we were immediately covered in PPE and brought to our quarantine station. So I've been staying in this hotel for the last week. I have one more
Right.
week to go. But I've been really comfortable. I've been having some good food. I've been working on content. So the hard part's finished. I'm here and I'm excited for the next thing to finally start after waiting for so many months.
Right. And I'm so glad it's happened for you. I'm so glad you're finally in Vietnam and you're going to stay with your husband after quite a while.
7
So,
months. Yeah.
7 months. Wow.
Yeah.
Eliza, you're someone who loves traveling. How did you manage in the lockdown? You weren't able to travel. So, how did that work out for you?
Well, the last time I traveled was actually when I went to Hyderabad, and that was
Right.
at the end of January. And it was like a cheeky weekend trip from Dubai. I didn't think much of it. I didn't realize that would be the last time before everything shut. But it is frustrating when I had to cancel plans and I couldn't go anywhere. But I think I just kept looking at the big picture. It's not just about me, it's about everyone's health, everyone's safety. I'm a teacher, so I think about my students. I wouldn't want them exposed to something and their families as well. So I mean, it's one of those things where in my stance, I'm quite privileged. I still kept my job throughout the whole thing. I still had an apartment. I was still able to get everything I need just by ordering it online. So I was looking back and thinking, it's tough, but I'm grateful for the things I have. So I just
Wow.
kept that in perspective.
Wow, that's such a
Yeah.
wonderful way to look at things. And you mentioned that you thought of your students, you're a teacher, and was teaching something you always wanted to do?
The job as a teacher kind of happened by chance, but throughout my entire life, I've always been either the oldest sibling or the caretaker or the tutor at school. And so it kind of just fell into that way. And I was really lucky that, I kind of discovered it early. I was 21 and I went to Korea the first time. I got a part-time job teaching and I realized this is what I want to do. And so for the last 10 years, I've been involved in teaching English. And then traveling was something that my father kind of did where, when I was growing up, I went on a lot of road trips across America because as a huge country, it's kind of like India. When you go to a different state, you have different sites, you have different geography. So he taught me how to travel because back then we didn't have GPS and we didn't have, everything done for us. So we had to print out the maps, we had to get the directions, we had to, hopefully book a nice hotel without knowing any of the routes. So from that, like I internalized a lot of that. So once I went international, I kind of already had the foundation for being a traveler. And it's kind of like an addiction. Once you start going one place and seeing how diverse and how beautiful the world is, if you have the ability to, you just want to keep doing it. So
Right. You moved out from the US when you were 21?
yes. Yes.
And you never went back. Is there something you miss about US? It's been so long.
I I have been back, but I've always
Oh, you
bounced
have.
around. So
Oh, right.
so I went to Korea twice, 1 year each time. But then once 2015 came and I got my master's degree, I came to UAE, and now this is the longest stint I've been away. So it's been 5 years since I've been back to the States.
Wow.
And honestly, it's just been about, working on myself, making opportunities for myself. Of course, I found my husband when I was in Dubai, and so like that makes a big change and everything. And then he's not even from the States, he's from India. So, this opens up a whole other
Right.
thing. So it's just one of those. And then unfortunately right now with everything the way it is in the States, it's not exactly the best time to go back or visit or stay. So it's just we just have to see how it is.
Right. Right. Eliza, I've been going through your page since I met you. Because to be honest, when I met you, I kind of just knew you as, my friend's wife. I mean, that's the kind of thing that I knew you as. But then after I met you, the thing that instantly struck me, and I think which I connected with somehow with you, was you were so open to learning. You wanted to know the why, how, and where of everything. And that was so wonderful and so inspiring to me. And that kind of does reflect on your page as well. Like the way you post things, like for example, if there's a word, there's a picture, and then there's the actual reality of what it is. So where did that idea come from?
I think I've always just been a very curious child, a curious person, and I was always taught that if you don't know something, you should look it up, right? So before the internet, I was always in the library at school. And then once I had the internet, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I can literally look up anything. And I've just always had like a kind of a sponge brain where if you take me somewhere and you teach me something, it stays with me. And then I get excited and I tell other people about it. So
Right.
it's always been my nature. Like finding out new things excites me. I try to learn something new every day. I try to tell my students, once you finish school, you're not done learning. You're just getting started. And, even as you continue growing, even as a teacher, even as a boss, even as a supervisor, there's always something to learn. And that's how you enjoy life. It's having that beginner's mind where you're like, I could be wrong about something. I could totally not know anything about something.
Exactly.
So, and it brings me a lot of joy to learn something new.
Yeah. What is the thing you love the most about being a teacher?
I like the connections that I make with my students because you know, our station is to give education, but you can't help that when you spend so many hours per day with someone talking about certain things, you know, you start to build that relationship. Some of my students would see me more than they would see some of their family members, you know, and so it's those bonds that you build. Like when I was teaching university in the States, I had students from Saudi Arabia that were there away from their families. And so one was, these are college students, one was pregnant with their first child. And so she texted me at the hospital and she goes, come meet my son, you know?
Wow.
And it's just like, wow, how wonderful of a connection. Her child's 2 days old and I'm holding him and making jokes about how he already knows English because he's been in my class for the last semester. So, you know, or like my students here, you know, I taught high school girls and they all graduated in this last term. And it was really emotional for us because they're seniors and then the pandemic happens. And so they don't get their graduation, they don't get their parties. And, you know, and then I was leaving and I had known them for the last 5 years. So it was just very emotional. So we keep a WhatsApp group and they message me through Instagram. They'll see something that I post and they'll be like when I got to see my husband from the window of my hotel for the first time,
That
they were
was so
messaging me.
sweet.
They're like, Miss, we've been waiting for this moment. We're so happy, you know. Like it's just I've been very fortunate to work with all age groups. So my very first job, I was working with KG. I've also worked with university, and I think that the most impactful though was the last 5 years I spent in UAE because it was the longest I spent at one school. So I got to see these girls come from, you know, grade 8, grade 9, and go all the way to their graduating year. And I taught them 2 or 3 years consecutively. So it was just nice to watch my students really grow and develop that relationship as their teacher. So yeah, that's probably my favorite part is just I'm very much a people person. So being able to cultivate those relationships and helping, you know, guide someone through perhaps some of the most turbulent years of their life. You know, high school's not easy for anybody. So, you know, just being there is it's a really good feeling. Yeah.
How have they helped you grow as a person? Because you've been teaching for 10 years now.
Mm. I think
And
that it's always about yeah, I think it's about getting different perspectives, right? We tend to, whether we realize it or not, we come into one area, we have one group of people, and we tend to kind of generalize. You know, for example, you know, in the Middle East, people are like, oh, these kids, they're from Dubai, they're really rich, they're really privileged, they have everything they need. And then, you know, just like anything else, you get to know them, you know, individually as a person, and suddenly you see things that you don't expect, or you learn things that you didn't know. For me as an American, I think it was really important that I got to learn a lot about not just Arabic culture, but also Islam as a religion, because in America we kind of have our own ways of portraying that, and I didn't know a lot about it, and I didn't really have any kind of motivation to learn about it. But then suddenly I'm teaching all Islamic students. I wanted to know more about the things they believed in and why they believed in it and how it guides them in their day-to-day life. I mentioned that the first Ramadan that I spent in UAE, I fasted with my students so I could understand how they felt, because if I'm expecting 100% from them in class and they're not eating all day, you know, it's like, how does that feel? I don't know. So I think it always keeps me in check as a person, and it makes me realize, you know, the gaps in understanding. So it's always good to be connected with that.
did you have a teacher who inspired you?
Well, for me, it's very cliche, but it was also my high school English teacher. So, you know, and I had her for grade 9, and then I had her again for grade 12. And, you know, she was that teacher I could tell anything to. You know, I could tell her about this boy that I was dating, or I could tell her about, you know,
Wow.
any problems living at home, or, you know, when I was going to university and things like that. Like, you know, she was always just there, and she's even still on my Facebook now, you know, and I'll message her, you know, for tips, you know, like, oh, I'm teaching this kind of class, what do we do? Or, you know, this, and she's just always there, and she remembers me, and she remembers all the jokes from my class and everything. So, you know, it's really nice just to see kind of like the torch being passed, you know, because now I get to be that for somebody else,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's really nice.
Wow. Eliza, I wanted to ask you about your Instagram account. So I read in one of your interviews, you said that you had 1,000 followers, and within a few days, you had 11,000 followers. And doesn't that put a sense of responsibility on your shoulders somehow? That you kind of have
Oh,
to keep posting creative content, you have to keep engaging your viewers and your followers. Does it get tiring at times?
I wouldn't say it gets tiring, and I don't feel that I have to push for engaging content. I think there's more of this like, wow, now all these people are watching me. I really need to make sure I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So not necessarily the quantity of posts or the things that I put, but like exactly what am I doing? What am I saying? What image am I projecting? You know, am I stepping over a line? Am I accidentally speaking for other people who I don't necessarily represent? There's a lot of social responsibility for that because me being a Westerner, me being, you know, looking like I do and speaking Malayalam, of course,
Yeah.
it gets a lot of attention. And so most of the people that follow my page are already in India, not necessarily studying Malayalam, but they're very much entertained and also learn a couple new things, you know, through my page. So I feel that, you know, what can I do to make sure that the content I make is not just, you know, entertaining, but also valuable
Yes.
and for social good. You know, I never started the page for my own personal gain. It started off as just how can I learn Malayalam when there's nothing
Right.
out there. You know, there's very few resources of learning Malayalam. And then all of a sudden, when I went viral within the span of a month, I gained 10,000 followers. And it was just like, wow, it's a lot of people, you know? So, and now I'm, you know, I'm at 36. And it's just like, when you were introducing me and you're like, she's an influencer, she's a celebrity. Even now, I'm like, you know, I can't, like, it's I'm just
And
a
you know
girl that
what?
learned.
And you know what, Eliza? That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you as a part of this series, because you're just doing it because you love it, and you want to help people understand and learn something which you love to learn and understand. And that's so beautiful because I don't know if I should be saying this, but social media has become all about the number game these days, especially Instagram. Everybody's a social media influencer and everyone's famous. But the essence of the whole thing, I feel, especially for youngsters, is that you can do so much through the social media platform. You can actually spread so much of good, you can actually spread so much of information, and you're doing that. And it's not like people aren't following people who are doing that. As long as you give them the right content, you have people who want that content. So it's just so amazing that you're doing that. And I'm a fan. I'm a fan, and I love all your posts, and I think they're wonderful. And I'm going to learn Malayalam as well.
Okay, Nolka.
Eliza, you visited India in 2016, if I remember right. I remember reading about it.
That was my first time.
What did you like about India, and what did you not like about India?
India, for someone who's never been, it can be very overwhelming, right? Like coming from America, before I moved to UAE and met other people from India and started talking to other people from India, we have a very shallow understanding of what India is. It's pretty much
Right.
Bollywood, tikka masala, and the Taj Mahal. Like these are the things that we think of when we associate with India. Obviously, there's so much more complexity than that. So when I went the first time, I did the tourist triangle mostly because I had some friends in Delhi and that was a quick, easy trip to do on a long weekend. And I was only 3 hours away. And I was really thankful because I had people there that I knew. So even though I was solo traveling, I had people taking me around, showing me the places to go. And like, you know, the thing about India is you can't really put it in a capsule. Like if I tell you my experience from Delhi, that's not going to be anything that represents Goa or Tamil Nadu or Gujarat, you know, like, you can't. But the biggest thing, and I've said this many times, in India, you go on these big extremes from this is incredible, the pinnacle of, you know, spirituality and society and art, and then you're like, what on earth is going on right now? And it's like in the span of one day, you're like going like you know from back and forth. You know, there's just it's and that's what's overwhelming about it. It's just that there's just you know this beautiful chaos, and you just have
Yeah.
open eyes, open mind, and you just you know, you go with it. You just go with the flow. I told my dad, I don't know how people drive in India. And he's like, well, if they grew up there, they understand how it is. And then it's like, of course it is. Like, you know, that's just, if you're around it and you're used to it, you know how to navigate it. But if you come in, it's just like, oh, wow, there's a lot to really, but it's like, it's just so ancient and old. And there's like so many stories to learn you know and you go to a different region and you have a whole books and books of stories and whatnot and it just goes back for so America's such a young country, right? Like
Right.
after colonization and being made into the US, it was like 200 years, right? And 250 years, And so our history, excluding the indigenous population, it's very shallow. So when we see the depth of India history, it's just, it's unfathomable, to think that a building has been there for so long, or the kingdoms that have been existing. So it's just so much, and you can never go to India once and see everything. I got so upset. I was flying somewhere, and in the queue, I heard these other tourists talking, and they were just swapping travel stories. And one guy said, "Have you been to India?" He's like, "Yeah, I went to Delhi, and then I went to the Taj Mahal, so I'm done." And I'm like, I'm just like,
Yeah,
oh my God.
right.
If there are any Indians in the vicinity, I want to apologize to all of them. So that's just how it is.
How has it been being married to an Indian?
I get that question a lot, and it's a really odd question to ask because, there's so many things that are very typical of like any relationship. Sometimes you have miscommunications, or sometimes, you have these funny stories. But there are some things that are cultural, right? Like for me, I'm showing him movies from the 80s and 90s that maybe he didn't watch growing up. So he gets to see these pop culture references for the first time. And then meanwhile, of course, for me, there's so much to learn, right? Because, and mostly from Kerala, right? Because my husband's from Kochi. And so I'm learning about Mollywood. I'm learning about the classics of Mammootty and Mohanlal. I'm learning about the new generation with Parvati and Rima Kalindal and all these cultural things, all these food things, all these political things. And it's just so much. It's really, but, like I said, my personality is very much like a sponge. So, whenever Arjun shows me something or introduces me to something, I get really, really excited about it. So that's fun. I think the biggest difference is just like family styles, right? Like stereotypically Americans are said that they're not so connected to their family, but I wouldn't say it like that. I just think that we express our affections in different ways. So we don't stay glued together. I left my home at 18 and moved out, and went to college and had two jobs and did all of that. And, a lot of American, teenagers and 20-year-olds do this, whereas in India, the parents want to take care of the kids and keep them in the house and, focus on your studies, don't do anything else kind of a thing. And so we have those two different backgrounds. And so sometimes we're swapping stories and I'll be like, yeah, when I was, this age, I was doing this, this, this. And he's like, oh, when I was that age, I was, partying in the UK on my dad's money. I'm just like,
Yeah.
So, yeah. But it's nice because we look at our own backgrounds and we're able to take what we like from both and then combine them. And so, like, if we decide to have a child, like, we've decided what do we like from each other person's upbringing and say, okay, well, we can do it like this, but we can also do this like this. And so it's nice to have that depth of experiences to work from. It gives us more options.
Right. And I also noticed you started something on your page. It was hashtag like us. And there's
Yangale
so
Fole.
many stories that are coming
Yeah.
up. There's so many people who have so much to share.
I'm actually seeing one person right now that just waved at me, Vin. He and his husband were on my page last week.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm loving, sometimes I get my ideas when I'm exercising, because your brain is just doing whatever. And as I was exercising, I just got this idea popped in my head. Why don't you do something about mixed couples? And I was like, wow, that's a great idea. So I just kind of sent out messages to groups and I made a Google Drive and I said, please, sign up here, put your information here. And the response was so good. And then once I started posting and I encouraged other people to use the hashtag, the stories are so beautiful and it's really wonderful. And what's really special is what you guys don't see, which is my inbox. And my inbox is full of people who haven't come out with their relationship yet, but now they feel more confident. They're like, Elikuti, I've been with my partner 2 years and we haven't told our parents yet, but we feel confident now seeing these other couples. We're going to keep trying. We're going to make it work, and it's just really lovely to know that this has that positive effect, not only on other couples, but also possibly, my audience. They're seeing these happy, healthy, normal couples that just happen to be from different backgrounds.
Right.
So back to what I was saying earlier, when I'm making content, I want to make sure it's a social good, that there's some
Right.
kind of benefit from it. It's not just for me being on Instagram,
I know.
talking Malayalam. There's more than just that.
Wow.
So
Wow. I was actually going to ask you, you started off the page with just an intention to share what you know, but now that it's gained the popularity that it has, you're actually doing something which is a lot more than what you started off, with. And that's so wonderful, Eliza. And I'm so happy to just know you. It's wonderful. But I was looking through your profile on Facebook, and I came across a post that you put up on your birthday, and it
mhm.
spoke a lot about the uncertainties of life and gratitude,
Mhm.
which I felt was so beautiful. You want to say something about that?
So usually the day before my birthday, I get very contemplative. I think a lot about my life. I think, I always, when people say, I don't like my birthday, I'm getting older, I always say, I love my birthday. It means I didn't die this year. It's like, it's very morbid, but that's really, I celebrated, I made it another year, right? And
Yeah.
so, I was thinking, whenever you're having a transition in your life and you're going through things, you kind of tend to look back and say, how did I get here? How did I get to this moment? And sometimes you look back and you're like, there were parts of my life I didn't think I was going to survive. It was so difficult or so hard, whether it's financially, emotionally, physically. You go through so many things and you are in that dark moment and you're just like stuck in it. And then 5 years later, you look back and you're like, wow, like it was so long. Why was I so upset? It was terrible, but now look, when I was in high school, I was extremely depressed and I wasn't able to get help for it because of my parents were just not exactly supportive because they didn't know a lot about mental health at the time. And so, I was really, really in a bad state. And then I'll never forget, a couple of years ago, I was in Switzerland and I was on a boat in the middle of Lake Lucerne. And Switzerland has to be one of the most beautiful places I've ever been to on this earth. And I remember sitting on that lake, riding on that boat, and just in my head, I had this thought was, I'm glad I didn't die when I was in high school because now I'm living this moment here. And so it's just one of those things. It's one of those quiet things that come in when you're completely at peace and you realize it does get better. And, things do, nothing's forever. So yeah, so on my birthday, I was thinking about basically all the things that should have killed me but didn't. So, and I was being very grateful for that I've made it past that, and now I'm at a much better place than I was even 5 years ago. So it's really great.
Yeah, it's such a wonderful thing to share with people because I feel even today a lot of people don't talk about stuff like this. They don't talk about mental health. They don't talk about um, issues that they deal with alone. And when they see people who are famous, people who are actually doing stuff and influencing people who are actually going through similar situations, it's not that they're not. It's not that everything's all hunky-dory and happy for everybody. Everybody goes through stuff like that. So I think that's great that you put yourself out there and shared such a story.
Well, I mean, we have to acknowledge though that people have different situations, right? So where I'm coming from, I was able to go see a therapist. I was able to travel to another country. I was able to do a lot of things. And some people can't, they're not able to access to healthcare, or maybe they're trapped in a relationship they can't get out of, or maybe they don't have a passport that allows them to travel. So while I do feel very happy and I like to talk about, like, yes, let's talk about mental health, yes, let's help each other out, we also have to realize that we as a society need to make it better for people so that they don't get to that point, whether it's providing better education, providing better housing, providing better community services. It's at such a ground level and not everybody has that kind of privilege. And so when we talk about mental health, we're not talking about the breaking point where someone is thinking about killing themselves. We have to look at the foundation. Where are these people growing up? What are they exposed to? What are they allowed to do? So there's a lot to think about in that.
Right, right. Yeah, that is quite an intense thing to think about. It's true. Um, what keeps you going, Eliza? Every day, your routine seems packed. You look like you have so much happening. So, what's your daily routine like?
Well, right now, because I'm in quarantine, I wake up and I take my temperature, and the front desk calls me, and I give them my temperature. I have breakfast, and I have a coffee, and I make my to-do list. You know, it's very tried and tested. I am a to-do list person because if I don't write it down, I'm just going to be bouncing all these things around in my head. So I make my to-do list for the day, and then I try to stick to it. And even if I don't do everything, I have like a general idea of this is what I want to get accomplished in a day. So, you know, whether it's make sure I exercise for 30 minutes, work on a project for 1 hour. Maybe I don't finish the project, but at least I gave 1 hour to that project, kind of a thing. And right now with content, you know, I do video editing, I do graphics design. I do follow-up texts with people who are helping me with collaborations. I do research. Today I had a Zoom call with someone about a future collaboration. We were finalizing some details. And then, you know, I spend time on Instagram, on Facebook, you know, killing time on social media. And, you know, so, you know, I try to keep a balance of social and productive tasks, but I'm definitely the kind of person who feels good when there's something to do. So for me, if I wake up and I'm like, I have something to do today, I feel very motivated. Like, I'm not a big TV person. I'm not a big, you know, like, I like watching movies, but not every day. So for me, Arjun says a lot, you know, like, Eliza, you don't know how to relax. And I'm like, for me, relaxing is not relaxing. I'm very tense when I'm relaxing. I need to do something with my hands or my mind. So,
So what do you do to relax? Do you do something in particular to relax?
well,
To
I mean,
calm
I'm
yourself
always
down?
listening to music. I like listening to music and reading. I just recently finished The God of Small Things.
Wow.
Excellent book. Yeah. I think social media is the best way for me to relax because I like engaging with people. For me, having a 20-minute conversation over text, that's really fun for me. And I giggle and make jokes and forward things and things like that. So that's for me kind of how I kind of unwind. And then, you know, that's I'm a very social person. So being in quarantine, it's like it's nice that I have, you know, technology to be able to just reach out and talk to
Yeah.
someone.
Yeah. So you did mention in a lot of interviews, Eliza, that you like cats. Why do you love cats so much? What do you love about
You know,
cats?
I think it was because when I was a kid, I was extremely allergic to cats, and so I
Oh,
couldn't touch them without. Yes, so like when I was very young, I had a very strong allergy. Like I would get a rash every time I would touch one, right? And
okay.
so like it was kind of one of those things that you can't have it, so you want it, right?
Ah,
And so yeah, so but then over time I had allergy injections and treatment, and now I don't have a cat allergy anymore. And then I don't know why, but my earliest memory of like a wild cat was when I was a kid. I got one of these trading cards from a boxed meal or something like that, and on the trading card there was a snow leopard, and I was so in love with the snow leopard. Like I carried the little card with me everywhere. And then when I was in school, they're like, "Oh, you need to do a report on an endangered animal," and I'm like, "The snow leopard is endangered." So I like wrote a whole thing on. I don't know. We've had this fascination, and I love all animals in general, but when it comes to having an animal in the house, I think that cats match my personality and my lifestyle better. Like I love dogs, but dogs need a lot of attention, and like I'm a very spontaneous person. I want to go out and do things. Like obviously, if I have a dog, I need to go home, and the training is a bit more and everything. So for me, cats are just they're chill and they're lovely, and I have two, and I haven't seen them in a month. Can't wait to see them
what are
again.
their
They're with
names?
Arjun. One is named Parashi, and the other one's name is Thor. So Parashi is the name of a king who defeated the British in Kerala. He stood up to the British, and there was a movie where he's portrayed by Mammootty. And then when we first got him, he was my first cat, and he was quite lonely. Like if we left the house, he would be crying a lot. So we decided we needed to get him a friend, and so we got Thorin. And Thorin is a Dravidian word that means companion or partner. So it's like the king and his companion, basically.
How
Yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
Nice. That's so cool. What was the most adventurous thing you did? You love adventure, right?
I jumped out of an airplane in New Zealand.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I went skydiving. Yeah. It was one of those things. I'm the kind of person where if I see something and it makes me scared or it makes me like curious, I have to do it or else I'll never know, you know? So I was like, okay, New Zealand has like some of the best skydiving. I'll do it once, see what it's like. You know, because when I was a kid, I'd like to ride roller coasters and do bungee jumping and these things. So I did it, and it was scary and it was fun, but I don't really need to do it again. I'm okay. But the video is so funny because you're falling to the earth so fast that your cheeks are literally like flapping in the wind.
Wow.
And so I remember getting the YouTube video and I was just like, oh my God. And I showed it to my students. They were cracking up. They're like, Miss, your face. So yeah. But that's probably the most adventurous thing I've done is jump out of a perfectly good airplane.
Wow. That's really brave. Eliza, do you have any parting thoughts to young teachers, young social media influencers? Because I think hearing you speak would really help them, give them some direction.
Well, I think that with anything you do, you have to do it because you're passionate about it, right? People don't become teachers because they want a summer holiday, you know, they don't do it for the salary. You know, people come, I've seen people come to Dubai or other countries because the salary is quite good for teachers there. And then after a year or two, they're basically just showing up to get a paycheck. And you can just tell it's really, you know, grinding on them. And it's one of those things like whatever you do it with passion, do it with genuine, you know, care. If you're a content creator, make content you care about. Like, don't worry about going viral. Don't worry about, you know, how quickly you grow. If you are making something you care about and you're making an effort to improve your craft and improve your knowledge about that subject, the growth will come with it. For me, I didn't know anything about video editing when I first started this page. It was all hand-drawn content. And then when I started a YouTube channel, I had to teach myself, you know, Adobe Premiere. So if you look at the videos that I made a year ago versus the videos I make now, the quality is such a huge difference. And it's because, okay, and that's another thing, don't be afraid of making something that's not ideal. Just make it and put it out there. Then grow from there. So see what you did, make notes, be honest with yourself, take criticism and move up. And it takes time. You know, Eliquity has now existed for 2.5 years on Instagram and 1.5 years on YouTube. And, you know, it's all genuine. If I couldn't do something that I wanted to do, if I had to make content in a certain way, if I had to, like, you know, I would just stop it. I would prefer to stop doing it as opposed to like trying to jump on trends or you know, things like that. So it has to be genuine. And the audience knows when it's genuine. They know if you're copying someone else. They know if you're, you know, putting up a front. So the best thing is, like, when people see me on Eliquity, they see Eliza. That's me. If they wanted to have a conversation, I'm exactly the same way. You know, this is not a front. So I think people love seeing that kind of approachability and someone that they see on the street.
Wow, that's so lovely, Eliza. Thank you so much for being a part of this series. It was wonderful chatting with you. I hope you had a good time as well. I'm so sorry about the technical glitch in between, but yeah. Any parting thoughts for us?
No, I'm just thank you for having me. I saw some of my fans come up here, and I'm really happy.
Thank you. There's so many of them, and they're all saying that they love you and they're so happy to see you, and it's just so much of positivity.
I have some of the best followers, really. Like, it's so wholesome. The comments that I get, the suggestions that I get. You know, when people tell me my kids know how to read because of you, or my wife is learning Malayalam because of you, it really warms my heart, honestly. And I love getting these messages. So, I guess that's it for now.
How sweet. It's so beautiful to just see this bond right here. There's so many people who are so happy to see you and just hear you speak. I'm one of them, definitely. So thank you so much for joining in, Eliza. And I can't wait to meet Arjun and you soon, once all of this ends. Hoping it ends soon.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.